Hello, hello. Hello, pizza eaters. We have a silver or gray Honda with license plates 7WZR blocking. Who drives a Honda Civic here? Honda Civic? Gray or silver Honda Civic? 7WZR. I'm thinking on this side.
you.
And that will be broadcasted on Facebook. So are you guys gonna like speak from here?
Yes, and we're going to use this when we're going to do breakout groups. So when people do breakout groups, we're going to wander with this one a little bit, and or we'll use it up here to repeat the question.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, everybody. We have a gray Tesla, license 8N something K. A gray Tesla, dark gray Tesla is blocking someone. Can I see a hand? Who has that gray Tesla? Fess up. Wow. Maybe in the restroom?
Maybe. Perfect. Thank you. And then we'll just... Perfect.
Do we have a clicker that works or doesn't
We
work?
do.
It does
We've
work?
tested it, and it totally works.
Yeah, sometimes there's noise is what happens. We think there's low, the band is kind of, is this going to be yours or do you want?
No, I think this is good. We put up two more just in case because we're actually 8. So we put up two more in case we need it. But we might have to be, kind of getting closer to people to be able to hear them to repeat the. So we have to do that.
And we have a low mic in case the panel wants to use that mic.
Great. We can just take that off. We can take that off and we can put somebody to hold. Yeah.
And then we've got a mobile mic for
Yeah.
us.
Great. 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 We're
We had
ready.
some salad. I did my good part. They didn't talk about salad. They just talked about cake and pizza, right? I did the salad.
We gotta slide that green stuff in there, The body likes it.
I really try. I try and before I like myself now.
I like salads.
But I never thought I'd be that person. I remember my dad talking about vegetables and salad. I'm like, that makes no sense. That's not true. Now I'm that guy, right? It's like, oh, this movie's so good. Ooh.
No, I'm that guy.
Yeah, I've become my dad.
Exactly. Yes, yes. It happens all the time. I say something and I'll think it's like, oh my god. I just said that.
Hey, she said the clicker works.
Well, like I said, you're at about 34, 35 feet from here back to the booth. And it should work. I've seen some documentation saying 50 feet. I've seen some documentation saying 33 feet. So,
That's a wireless weather. Wireless weather.
well, the problem is, for proximity to these houses, that would be a big deal.
As people start waking up and having their brunch, they're starting to consume our bandwidth.
Bandwidth swine that they are.
I'm a little surprised that drywall, no one's really advertised at all. Wireless protection. There's no interference and also no swaying.
That's a good question.
That's called a tin hat.
Semi-tin hat, right? Aluminum foil. Tin foil outside.
Exactly.
What's your time? Right now. Hello, everybody. 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes and we'll get started with the community meetings. What's that? Okay, everybody, grab your last piece of cake, maybe a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom. But it's time to be assembled here, please. It's like very directive. Come on down. What's that?
Are you going to primarily speak from the podium?
Until we get to the breakouts.
Yep.
Okay, we got to rock. Okay, let's move. Okay, party people. Party people, come on over.
Do the whistle.
Come on, party people. All right, we're going to start. We're starting without you.
Marjorie is.
We're starting, people. I'm sure they cannot. All right, party people, if you can hear me, clap 3 times. That was excellent. All right, if you can hear me, clap 3 times. Okay, we're going to start. We're going to start because we have a hard stop, so we need to move along and respect the people that are coming behind us to use this wonderful space that we're in. So while people are settling, I will remind you this is Keith, and I am still Chris.
Still Chris?
Still.
Still Chris?
And we are the leaders of the exploration teams, and we have the entire ELT today, and they'll be joining us on stage a little bit later. But for right now, we're going to kick it off with an invocation. And I think we might have... John, can you help me, please? Phone a friend. Thank you. Thank you.
We're good.
All right. Would someone like to lead us in an invocation?
So if you can hear me, just do the peace sign. Okay, that was at least 85%. Take a nice deep breath. And just feel into the space, the connection that is present. And in this moment, we become conscious of it. That we are waves in the ocean, as just mentioned before. But we're all part of the ocean. Just accepting and recognizing this oneness that is. The allness. And this capacity of this one to hold it all. I am one with it, as is each person in this room, here by divine appointment, allowing all that is part of it, what shows, what doesn't show, but being in that expressly connected, conscious, present place, right here and right now. Any fear in the room, we just acknowledge and just put it aside. And allow the courage that is each one of us to speak what is ours in this moment. To come at anything that we do today with extraordinary respect. Let's pause. Extraordinary respect, which is the love of community. In gratitude for all the hands that have been part of this, with every voice in this room, whether it speaks out or doesn't. And in deep gratitude for the time we have together today, for the pure potentiality of what we've said yes to. And in gratitude, we release this prayer. And so it is.
So it is. Keith, will you read our exploration vision and goal?
I'd be glad to. Through mindful and respectful exploration, we are creating a healthier foundation that supports and engages a whole beloved community equipped to launch new strategies for a thriving center. Our goal, within the context of the care model and our values, create and present to the exploration leadership team a consensus recommendation relative to any showstoppers or any significant risks to unifying the two centers. Also provide a list of additional items to consider in phase 2.
Thank you. Everybody should go, yeah! Yeah! Oh, that was great.
That's crazy good.
Just a reminder, we, along with the extremely large telescope that is being built in Chile, due to come online later this summer, are under construction. Neither completing the telescope nor getting to the vote on the 23rd is the goal line. I'm thinking that telescope's going to find some pretty amazing things. Does it know what it's going to find? Nope. But that's not the goal. The goal is engaging in this exploration in all the ways that Reverend John laid out so eloquently a little bit earlier. That's the goal. So just a reminder as we enter into today and coming up to the 23rd, that's where we are, under construction and really excited for exploration to continue. Who knows what we're going to find? Keith? Who knows? Do you know?
Something good.
Something good. Something wonderful. I think the constant reminder is that the important piece is how we engage together. That's the important piece, how we engage together. All right, we're going to give you a little update on our a summary of where we are. So between last month and this month, we have, the teams have met pretty much weekly. They were asked to identify any impediment to merging and to provide us a list of things to consider more deeply in phase 2, and to consider Reverend Bobby as the spiritual leader bridging from our shared paths to the future. So the teams met and they discussed and they brought that together. The ELT conducted 3 listening sessions and we'll have a 4th one this Wednesday with the communities. We have conducted this meeting every month. Eileen C. Davis, raise your hand, sister. Has conducted community update listening sessions. Thank you, Eileen, for your work on that. And they continue, that's right. And the ELT took all this information and discussed, and then created a recommendation, which it has provided to the board and the leadership council. And we have a bunch of considerations that we are working on and mapping into priorities as we move into phase 2. And we remain, as an ELT, mission-focused and continue employing the care model. So what have we learned? I think one of the biggest learnings, and you've heard it several times today, is that the care model has continued to improve and foster connection and collaborative thinking. I have heard example after example after example from every single team of how the care model and the use of it as a process is allowing us to explore things in brand new ways together. I think that's one of the biggest learnings that we have had to date, and probably the most powerful learning that we have to date.
It looks a little bit like your banyan tree. What do you think?
That is my banyan tree. What's my banyan tree? It's mine. Yes, exactly. The teams provided lists of considerations for phase 2. There were no showstoppers. So we have, if you add all the recommendations together, it's about 15 pages of material, and inside of that, there's no showstoppers. There are many, many items that were brought forth in the list of considerations that need to be considered across multiple teams. So there are items where it may be something that needs to be considered by finance and governance and the admin team all together. So we're considering how's the best way to tackle those things in a collaborative way as we move into phase 2. And the other thing that we really, really learned was that the community members in every listening session want really detailed answers. And in many cases, we don't have those detailed answers just yet. But as we talked about earlier, the process that we're going through, it's going to unfold. The details are going to unfold, just as they have to date. So a few reminders from our prior session. If the communities vote to unify, a spiritual leader will be required for both the short term and the long term. That's a pretty logical conclusion for us. A transitional structure will be required, and that is going to be defined between April and May, and obviously has to include the board and the leadership council, but we can't start on that until the vote. And that funding and skilled hands are table stakes for a thriving community. And what we know for certain is that we have learned, and we heard earlier, about the abundance that we live in and the abundance that we operate from. And we have everything we need in this room and in our shared communities. Keith, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, so where are we going to from here? The board and the leadership council will review the exploration leadership team's recommendation. They will create a community recommendation that they will bring forth to the communities on the vote on April 23rd. If there's a consensus across both communities to move forward, we'll move forward into phase 2. So there's a recommendation, goes to the board makes a recommendation to each community in each community's meetings on the 23rd, and then there's a vote. If there's consensus in the vote, we move to phase 2. Is that clear for people? Yes? Okay. All right. If we move to phase 2, then what we think it's going to look like is that the ELT and the board and the council is going to meet. The ELT and the exploration leadership teams are going to meet, and we're going to determine what are the priorities and the things that we need to work on in phase 2. We have a draft of what that looks like, and we'll be talking about that the Tuesday after the 23rd if there's a unification vote, and we'll then establish phase 2 timelines. Does that make sense to people? Okay. All right. Okay then. I think then the thing that we wanted to talk about prior to having Reverend John and Reverend Bobby come up for just a minute is we wanted to talk about the thing that you heard today, which is about moving from a minister-driven group to a community-driven group to a mission-driven group. And really, that's a really exciting thing, and we certainly heard today plenty of evidence of how we can collectively do that. We as a community have all the raw materials that we need to be able to collectively do this together. So really it's moving, as we move into phase 2, it's moving from a person-driven to a community-driven to a mission-driven. And so here's some things that I heard today. I heard that we as a community can do this together. We can do this together. That we are What I wrote in my journal was that we are actually not religious scientists, but we are scientists of vulnerability. And I think Reverend John's right. And I heard this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago that we are in a state of evolution, certainly in spirituality. And I think we just happen to be doing our own version of what that looks like, but there are probably lots of people who are out there that are scientists of vulnerability right now. And I think this allows us to move out of our not enoughness and into the fullest expression of our wholeness. And I think that's the wildflowers that are sitting in this room. And I think that's what we are bringing together. That's what this slide means. We just have to show up as the seeds that we already are. We got to bring our cracked pots that are also sitting in this room together. And we just have to continue to water that, and something amazing is going to bloom. Keith, anything you'd like to add to that?
Keep going. You're doing good. Doing good.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? We want to make sure that we're answering your questions before we move on. Yes, Ray.
I have a question about, in one of the slides you mentioned that a spiritual leader is needed both for the short term and for the long term. I understand the short term, that's obvious, that's very evident. Unless I'm missing something, is there something else that you mean by a spiritual leader be needed for the long term, when given that any spiritual community, in effect, has to have a minister?
No.
Repeat the question, though, too.
The long-term aspect of a spiritual leader or a minister is, in fact, what you mean, that whatever iteration we end up being, that it will have a minister. I'm a little bit confused there. I just want clarity.
So it might be, so the question is, so that we can make sure that people on the recording can hear it. Let me make sure I've got it. So the question is, on the slide where we talked about there being the need for a spiritual leader, both in the short term and the long term, is there something different between the short term and the long term? Is there some question about why we would need a spiritual leader in the long term?
No. Your definition of what is the long term, given that any spiritual community by nature has a spiritual leader, but you made sure to mention that it needs a spiritual leader in the short term and the long term. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that
I think if from an
what I said.
the reason I think we talk about that is I think there's been some confusion about where are we and where are we going. And we know in the long run we are a spiritual community and we will have a spiritual leader. From looking at it from our mission and vision standpoint, we know that a healthy community has a healthy spiritual leader and moves through the transitions as they happen. We happen to believe that we have a very capable spiritual leader that can lead us through the short term into the long term. Whatever the long term ends up being, it might be, we don't know, we're not trying to set any boundaries around time frames. But we definitely believe that we need the continuity of a spiritual leader from now into whatever is our next evolution. And if that's longer term, great. If it's mid to long term, great. We don't really have a sense of time, but we do really believe from the sense of having a healthy and thriving community that we need that continuity of a spiritual leader. So it was more intent to say we need that continuity. Thank you for your question. Okay, all right. So if there aren't any more questions, we're going to have Reverend John and Rev Bobby come up.
Hello, hello.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. Still pretty emotional. I'm not verklempt.
Verklempt?
I was, but I'm okay.
Good.
How about you?
I'm doing good, actually. This has been an extraordinary process, and one of the things that I have found is I've had conversations with other ministers in our movement, and they're very uncomfortable about our comfort in this discomfort. Did you get that? So I'll say that again. They're very uncomfortable about our comfort in this discomfort.
And that's not surprising, because the model that traditionally operates is to provide comfort for the flock, right? And so something that where you start stretching outside of that is not comfortable for the minister to witness the discomfort in the community. Isn't that interesting?
Right? And I think the challenge, although I would have to say in my own case, you know, when John and I first started talking, we were talking about our own experiences in ministry, and while they have been different, they have been but similar. And one of the things that we both found was that in the model that has existed, it has not been healthy for us as ministers, which would lead me to think it's not completely healthy for you.
Well, in the traditional model, as I shared some of that today, is that there was shaming and betrayal, and if, you know, that's just human nature. It's not something that ministers own, and so that becomes a reflection and experience of the community. If they're sensing that, you know, the minister might be not feeling enough, well, that is energetically transmitted to the community, I think.
Right, and in ministerial school, often what we were told is that if the consciousness of the community is lacking, it's because of our consciousness. So we're responsible for all of your consciousness. Who wants that job?
Exactly.
I mean, really, raise your hand and we'll just, right? That's a difficult place to be in. And to...
Well, and, you know, we talk about the burden of the administrative stuff that we offload onto the minister. That is minor compared to that. Of having to be the parent or the guide for everyone's discomfort.
I also remember, and maybe this, for those of you who've been on boards, you've probably had this experience. It's not just here with the minister, it's also with the board of directors, which they've had to hold the community together too, right? And I remember when I first came to Namaste, one of my favorite parts of the meetings, and this was when Chris was the board president. Believe me, I'm not giving this to her. But I remember the first, okay, what fundraiser are we going to do? What's the connection we were going to do? And I honestly felt overwhelmed. Yes, didn't we all? Because the care of the community was relegated to so few people, right? And so it is a heavy burden for so few to carry. And that's the model. And so one of the things about this is, as much as this has been a bit of discomfort, I think as a minister, I have found the most comfort through this process than I have ever found. I wasn't alone either, though.
No, and for me, as I said in my talk, having that vulnerability and opening our hearts, you discover the missing parts that are in your own heart, that are in the other person. And that's the whole point, is to discover that richness in community. And from that place, the idea of the sacred changes,
doesn't it?
Entirely.
We get to explore that reverence expands beyond what we typically think is reverent. That when you actually trust in the mystery, you're giving reverence to what is about to unfold, rather than I have to know. Because if I have to know, it's totally contrary to what we teach, which the fact is that I don't have to know the how. But what I really do have to have, which I believe in my own life, is I have to have the preparedness to be open to the possibility. I have to have the spiritual tools in place and be practicing those spiritual tools so that opportunity meets preparedness. So that if I'm not prepared, which prepared doesn't mean I have the answer, prepared means that I have emptied out
and opened up. Because the universe is just dying to bring you the fullness of its expression. But we're the ones that are in the way. It's nothing that the universe is doing. There are more opportunities available to us than we can even imagine. But that quote from Emerson just keeps coming up, that get your bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits that want to bring you your greatest good.
So we have to experience ketosis, which is the emptying out. Because if we're full of it, we have to empty out so that what we call metanoia, which is transformation or a new vision, can come in. But if we are full of the past, if we are full of all the answers of the way we do things, you've heard that for those of you that have worked in the corporate world, it's, but we've always done it this way, right? And how well has that served it? How often has the culture been so full of it that there's no room for something unique and different and healthy? Because we keep wondering why we keep ending up here. But here now is something quite different, isn't it?
Well, we're always admonished, excuse me, to pay attention to conventional wisdom. Have you ever heard that? Well, how is conventional wisdom serving us right now? Don't hold back, Eileen.
With stereo.
And so until we open up to greater possibilities, you know, conventional wisdom can be helpful, but it's relying on the imagination of the past, which doesn't suit the possibilities of where we are right now and what can unfold in the future. So conventional wisdom you take with a grain of salt. It's good to cover what has to happen next in some cases, but for me it's more of a warning sign. If it's conventional wisdom, I'm going to look at something else first, because there's greater possibilities there.
It's what you said about you can look back and learn so much, but we still have to live in the present. So we can learn from the past, but we don't use the past to completely inform where we're going. We have to be willing to accept that the past has told us a few things. The fact that in our communities, there are, I would say just for me, there are a host of people in both communities that have been serving and giving in a way that has kept things moving. But we probably know that that's not sustainable, right? Amen. Thank you. And we've learned that we can do things in the way that's been from the past, which has been more of a competitive nature, which John mentioned at conventions and conferences. Well, how many people do you have? Well, I have this many. And we feel great if we have more than the other person.
Well, back in the day, you couldn't have another center within 5 miles of a different center. There were all sorts of restrictions. I mean, you couldn't get more competitive than that.
Thank you.
And everybody was worried about poaching members from one community to another.
Still happens. Yes, but we all did it. Let's be honest, we've all been in that place, right?
That's
well, why
the
are they
model.
going to Seal Beach, or why are they going to Namaste, or now they're here, or now they're there? Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, Namaste, Lakewood, you name the center, and we've competed with them. How's it served us?
Oh, and your brochure shows up in my center, and you have classes advertised?
I got kicked out of a center that one time for that. So hold on with your questions for just a moment. But the thing is this, is what we're talking about is really, can I borrow Max's phrase? Is we're choosing to be one. We're choosing to be one. No matter what the choice is on the 23rd, there's still a choice in there to be one in some way. And we're considering a huge shift from the minister being the source to a resource. Yeah, you want to follow that?
Well, it is fundamentally different, is that shift in consciousness to, in the 19th century, Walt Whitman said, "The day of the priest is done. They've done their work. Every person shall be their own priest. And that's what we're really counting on. We're a disciple of ourselves. We're learning at the feet of the master within us that has a bigger idea of who we have come here to be than we allow. And the role of the minister is just to show you. Do you understand that?
To
Do you
point
really
away.
understand that?
To point away.
To point the way. But it's the work that is up to you, not us.
And so when I think about like trust in the mystery, which is one of the most important and powerful spiritual practices that we have, it's the one we don't practice. And if I was to go even deeper into what the mystery is, we're the mystery. It's not out there. We are the mystery that we're trusting. We're trusting each other. We're trusting that when you say something to me and I don't get it, that I'm going to ask you what you mean before I go down the rabbit hole. Right? That I'm going to explore and give generous intention to you. That I'm going to know that we're all doing our best. And that we're going to develop and collect skill sets that allow us to truly practice this philosophy as it was intended. Because it's more than just practice. It takes competency in the practice of it. And so in this big change, what's going to be really, really critical is that we brush up on our skill sets, pull out the toolbox, and explore the things that we need to learn, which some of those tools might be spiritual tools, but they're not all what you would call spiritual tools. It's broader than that.
And much deeper. And what I'm learning in the class that I'm now taking is that these tools are really fundamental in the evolution of consciousness. You can't sustain the level of metaphysical wisdom and understanding if you can't take care of some of the basic things like relationships. You know, if you don't know how to be with one another, how can you manifest your greater purpose? And so it requires a lot of that deeper work we call psychological or emotional or whatever it is. We talk about it in terms of emotional and social intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And having to have the willingness to challenge ourselves in those areas.
Coming back to even when I'm disturbed by something, and the easy thing is to blame it on someone else that I'm disturbed. That's the easy pathway, because then I don't have to look here. But our philosophy invites us to do that because in any situation, we can be the beneficial presence. We can ignite and invite a broader thinking, a connection to a vision of creating a community that truly, truly works for anyone that walks in that door.
And so you've seen in the care group the degree that you've been exposed to it. And I know for some of the Namaste folks, it's just been the last couple of months, but how quickly consciousness shifts in that. Now imagine that process as a practice that goes deeper, and we develop some real competencies in terms of caring for one another and being in that place. There's no limitations on what this community can do if that happens or when that happens.
So as we go forward, the opportunity exists as spiritual resource to support you on this journey. So if the vote is yes, we move forward with being a resource as providing the tools, the conversations, and the opportunity for us all to look within ourselves and say, what can I be in this? Not so that I'm comfortable. Because what is it, John? The edge of our discomfort is where evolution happens. It doesn't happen in a place where I'm just so comfy cozy and everything's great and it's all love. It's true, it's all love, but it doesn't always look like love. You know, the Course in Miracles says you want love, then everything unlike love is going to show up just to bring that forward. And which is Don't ask for patience. Don't ask to grow in patience unless you're ready. But to me, it's ask for patience so that I can grow in my knowing of who I am, the true self.
And that takes courage.
It does. So the tools after the vote, whatever the vote may be, if the vote's no, then we do something else, and the communities get to explore that. The vote is yes, the communities step into a spiritual growth that is as anchored and is as expansive and is as exciting as each person in this room is willing to step into. It will not be up to us, nor should it be, because we will continue to shrink and struggle if it just gets pointed to a person.
So imagine that community, which is so strong that it is self-sustaining, resilient, flexible, no matter what comes down the pike, as I said in my talk, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a recession, whatever it is, or whether the minister leaves, this community can continue to thrive. That's the vision that I have, and I see it unfolding.
So if you're struggling, get in a class. Spiritual practice, Monday through Friday, the practitioners are holding. There's opportunities for us to grow, but to sit here by ourselves and try to figure it out all on our own up here, by the way the Hatter said, it's crowded up in here. It isn't serving me or anyone else as soon as I open my mouth. It's not to say we don't speak to what we're uncomfortable about. We just don't buy real estate in that place and live there.
Amen.
Amen. So it is.
We wanted to leave some space for people to have questions and answers. Maybe we can have everyone on the ELT come up and sit down. Can I have some applause for these people? They've done some great work. They've been very diligent, added their gifts. So we do have a time target that we're working against. I think around 1 o'clock. I think there are some other people that's going to be needing the facility. But we wanted to host any questions that you might have, and we've got some knowledgeable people up here. Please.
I am just in awe of what you just shared. It was just mind-blowing. And now I totally see why you started talking about scientists, the scientists, and it just is all just kind of coming together for me. I'm not a scientist, but I know a little bit. A scientist is exploring, and they're doing experiments, and they're in the mystery. And this is very exciting to me. I don't know. I'm just in awe at the way this is moving. And this is really mind-blowing that we're moving from, the minister is everything and it's all on them and we're just here following and then we can put the blame on them and things don't work out. That is just really pathetic. And I'm so excited that this is the way we're moving. I mean, I just feel, with this new model, I feel heard, I feel cared for, I feel liberated, and we can evolve. We can all evolve and grow together in this, and I'm excited. And I have to let you all know, on Wednesday night, I have another commitment, so I haven't heard any of the questions and answers, but what I heard today is fabulous, and I am just, wow. I'm here, I'm open to the mystery, and I want to watch this experiment develop. And I'm here, I'm just 100% here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your sharing. Any other questions?
Is it true that the last 3 Wednesdays have been recorded, and can people go and watch that somewhere?
That is true.
The question is, have the last Wednesdays been recorded? And it is true. Where's it at?
So if you look in the newsletters, there is a link in the newsletters, and it will take you to a YouTube video from each week. So you'll have to go to your past newsletters, and the reason is because we haven't put it out there public, because it's people sharing from their hearts. And so we've wanted to honor the sharing that's been going on. So go to the newsletters, and if you don't have them, you can reach out to the communities. But I think, Donna, you get the newsletter, correct?
I do.
Yep.
I just haven't had the time.
Yeah, just open up the newsletter and read the newsletters, because they are full of all the information with respect to what is happening. And you'll see a new one tomorrow from Namaste and on Friday from Seal Beach that includes an update from Keith and Chris.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we have one more listening session this coming Wednesday, 6:30.
In the beginning, I assumed wrongly that there would simply be presented to each congregation yea or nay as to the finding. When I saw how many people from each side were involved and how many diverse questions and sections were set up, that made a whole lot more sense than what I thought in the beginning.
Okay, thank you, Don. Yes?
Has there been discussion as to what will happen with the music team?
The question is, has there been discussion as to what will happen with the music team? There's a lot of interest in having great music because it's important, right? And after a unification vote, that is one of the downstream or one of the decisions that will be made and considered on the backside. Thank you. Perfect.
How do we, because I think maybe like a lot of us come from minister-centric models, and so now we're going from a passive to active participation in our own center. So we're bound to bump into uncomfortable places where we're used to the minister taking care of this, we're used to somebody else telling us what to do. So what's the bridge? Like, is it the care groups that's going to help us transition, take ownership, where we're used to being more passive in our roles as in a congregation? So.
Okay, so the question is, what is the bridge between a minister-centric and a community-centric or mission-centric community? Would one of you like to answer that, please? John.
We'll just go over it. So the bridge is indeterminate in length in terms of moving from minister-centric to mission-centric, because there are so many competencies that have to be learned, not mastered, but at least accepted. And so it's going to go at the pace that the community can absorb. And so
So we're not just dropping them off?
it's not a flip that's a switch that's going to be flipped and then we're there. It can take, as long as it takes for the community to really embrace this and be engaged in it. But the things that come out of it will really help to accelerate it.
And I think through this, there will be, instead of providing answers, there will probably be more questions in response. So when you think about it, you may say, well, Rep. Bobby, what do we do here? And I'm like, I don't know. What do we do here? Think about it in the world we live in. Just from a corporate standpoint, there's always someone that knows, that's supposed to know. So sometimes those answers have come up when it's a great answer for my life, but it is a good answer for your life. Is it the best for the community? And it shouldn't be left up to a person, because we know what happens when we do that, right? So can we give it the transition that it needs to move? How long does it take to move a culture?
Well, and the other when we rely on experts to inform us about the best way to move forward. And as I mentioned before about conventional wisdom, I would hesitate to jump into that. The tendency is, as we've talked about, in terms of a caterpillar, coming to the fullness of their lifespan, disintegrates in the chrysalis and becomes liquid. And because of the implicate order of things, the cells inside automatically know where to migrate to. Well, we're not caterpillars. We have this, and we tend to think that this is superior in some ways to the implicit order. And so we try to cobble together the old DNA from our experience of the minister-centric model and say, well, it worked before, so it must work now. And those are the things that we have to be aware of and to recognize that they may not, just because the solution seems easy, it may not be in the best interest of what is trying to be created.
And the last thing I'd say is it's not going to be structureless. There's that. And there will be folks that have responsibilities. There will be that. But how can we engage the community more so that it doesn't feel like, because we've been operating from lack, as John spoke of. That's what we've been doing. So how do we operate from a place of plenty? Enough.
Okay. Any more questions? Mike, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, so I was so excited and so honored to be asked to be a part of the diversity team, and I will say that I've been trying to do what I can on my part to like raise my own consciousness and my own awareness, and in workshop and prayer meetings. Thank you, Valerie. You rock, by the way. I love it. So if it's not part of 7 a.m., please come. Anyway, sorry, well, shameless plug. But I will say that I don't want to discount on-the-job training, and I will say that while I was kind of talking about corporate world, because I will say that I've had a couple of interactions that were uncomfortable with some of my team members, and so I had to learn through pain, through my own pain, my own issues and my own head and my own stuff, and that I think helped raise my consciousness just a little bit. I'm still learning, but it was huge. And this kind of on-the-job training thing, like when life shows up and we're in committee and we're trying to, and we're very passionate about our own community. We're trying to make things work, and we're each coming from a place of love for our own community. We're trying to figure this all out. So I don't want to discount that part of it, like learning through life, learning through making mistakes, and learning through falling and being guided. Thank you, Reverend Bobby, and my co-team members that I was able to walk through this. And because we came out the other side like together, I feel more connected to them than when I started. Like they're my people now. Like we figured it out, and it gives me faith that when life shows up again, and it will, because we are human, right? I have life's going to show up again. It just gives me faith that we'll figure it out. We'll get through it together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any last questions or comments?
Yeah, just a comment, observation. I think the process that is unfolding here is really an opportunity for the congregation to become more empowered, to step into more authentic power.
Fantastic. Lorraine?
I've been on the cultural transition along with Diane and a number of people in this room. And we started in a place and we were talking about values. And then from values, we created ideas that would support in the transition. But that game of telephone that you play? Where you're talking and the next person, and it comes out just, that's what it was like. From what it started, it came out completely different, and it came out phenomenal. And that was all of us being in amazing that will come out the other end where we're all having responsibility and we're all participating. Which leads me to another point. The difference between a crackpot and a crack pot. Right? A crackpot is nuts. A cracked pot is imperfectly perfect and watering the flowers and creating this beautiful place and this beautiful universe. I kind of got stuck between those two things. Am I crazy? Or am I creating? I'm both, actually.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So then I started thinking, well, the ministers who are in this old model and they're feeling crazy, they are crackpots. And as the tradition, as the process is going, and they're accepting, okay, I'm imperfectly perfect, I'm accepting it the way it is and the way it's not, and I'm going to be community oriented, I'm not going to be perfect, I'm going to be the spiritual leader, but not the only leader. There's going to be like groups of leaders. So now we're all going to cracked pots. So that was what I was.
Sylvia?
Yes. What all this has brought to me today is my own spiritual maturity. To go within myself, and open myself up to be vulnerable, to grow, and in my spiritual practices, to really go within me, to ask myself, what is it that I am to do in this process? And so I'm going to miss you so much.
No. Oh. Thank you, Sylvia. Janice?
I also am going to try not to cry to say when I say this, but I've had several people today and actually in the last 18 months come up to me and say, oh, thank you so much for what you're doing. We really appreciate this. And what I've come to realize, and this is where it gets touchy for me, is how grateful I am to have something that means this much to me. You know?
Oh.
How not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets something that means so much that you're willing to just do whatever. That, you know, I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm whatever, and what a gift. You know, so you're stuck with me.
Thank you, Janice. Don?
In the beginning, I thought certain ways that I would have preferred certain things to happen and the end result to be a certain way. But after thinking about it a while, I saw that the end result was so important. However way we got there, I was fine with.
Thank you. You know, through this process, there's been all times where in the midst of the discomfort, it feels like a rush to a solution would feel better, right? But sometimes not knowing is just part of our learning and process. And today during the service was pretty clear to me that things are working, right? That the process is working, that we're going to be okay. And so I just want to applaud everybody that's here today that cares. And this extraordinary set of people that have done so much work. Okay, and we'll be around, you know, we'll just keep going. Okay, thank you. Prayer. We need to close with a prayer, though.
All right. Are you ready? Yes. I invite you to take a big, deep breath. And we just move into that place of gratitude, of recognizing the sacred in this moment, the sacred that exists in all things, especially this beloved community that is unfolding in remarkable ways to creating a community where every voice matters. Every person is a reflection of that divine individualization of spirit, and to see that we grow deeper as we can see that mirror as a reflection of our own vulnerability, our own stories, and that as they are told, we go deeper into greater appreciation and sacredness, sacred awareness of how great this gift is that has been given to us. And that as we come together, it just resonates and grows and builds beyond anything we can imagine. And so we take a moment to fan that flame in our heart for the God in all creation, allowing that to burn more brightly than we could ever imagine, and know that we don't have to make anything happen, but the flame of that will be an attraction to all of the communities around us, to each and every person that may come here to be healed, blessed, and prospered in some way. And we give thanks for that, knowing that each of us contributes to that outcome. So we give thanks for the exploration teams. We give thanks for the community support of this initiative, and we're anticipating with great excitement the unfolding of this for the highest good of all. And together we say, and so it is.
Woo! Governance team, we're going to meet at the office building next door.